Hey, what's going on, my fellow Entropians? Cloak and Daggers here with another Entropia Universe video. Tonight we are discussing the top 5 best mobs for you to hunt as a new player. Now, I'm not talking about those mobs around Camp Icarus because, quite frankly, that's where everybody starts hunting. I'm talking about where do you move on once you are done hunting those mobs. Where can you go? Which one should you hunt? Where can you go to make some ped? We're going to talk about that right here, right now. Let's jump into this video. Alright guys, before we jump into this video, let's just quickly talk about Entropia Wiki. This website is jam-packed full of information about Entropia Universe, and you can find it from the Entropia Universe launcher page. Otherwise, it's just entropiawiki.com. I come here all the time whenever I'm looking for information on something I'm trying to hunt, or if it's an item I'm crafting, whatever. This site has just about everything you need to know. So what I recommend before you go out hunting and choosing a new mob is to do a little bit of research on it first to see if it's something you really want to go after. You can check everything from the kind of damage it deals out, so you know what kind of armor you need to use, what kind of health levels they're going to have, so you know how much damage you need to deal, what kind of loot they drop, what kind of skills you'll get from the iron missions, because those aren't over yet. You want to get as many of those iron missions done before that is up. Just make sure you swing over there first before you go hunting. Alright, now the reason I've chosen the Berrycled, because you should be already familiar with them from the punies around Camp Icarus. So you should kind of know how to expect, you should know what to expect as far as aggression goes. And their health levels aren't very high. They do jump up a little bit from the juveniles up to 70, but it's still pretty low. You could probably, if you really wanted to, hunt these with a TT gun if your evade is high enough, or if you got some light armor on you as well. What's nice about the young is they count as 2 points towards your iron mission for the Berrycled, so you can get the first and maybe the second level done hunting these youngs. For the third and fourth one, you're probably going to want to jump up to a larger maturity. For their damage type, they do 50% cut and 50% impact, so when choosing an armor, keep that in mind. They also can be fairly aggressive, so be careful not to pull too many of them and get yourself into a pinch. But these guys are a fantastic mob to hunt. They do drop some decent loot, my favorite being animal muscle oil. I use it for crafting all the time. You'll get other things like occasional Berrycled skin, short fern boards, the occasional Berrycled claw, which is kind of TT food. You're going to get some animal hide. Tier 1 components have decent markups, so watch out for those. Other than that, everything else isn't very great. If you're really, really lucky, you might get a gun to drop off of them. Anyways, this is a great choice, and let's move on to the next one. Number 2 on our list is the Shinkiba. It can be found just outside of Twin Peaks, which is right over here. It's just to the west here. If you take the road through the archway to the west, you can't miss them. The reason I picked the Shinkiba is because at this spawn location, you can find anywhere from young all the way up to, there are 1 or 2 guardians, but for the most part, they're mature and old and a few providers, which is a good step up from the punies. Once you start maybe working your way up to like the AR matrix, like LR10, and maybe stuff just slightly under that, these guys are a great source to hunt. Again, they give you points toward the Iron Challenge, which is chock full of great skills in there. They're not super aggressive, and best of all, they're spread out, so you don't have to worry about getting swarmed by them. Just in case that they are maybe just a little bit stronger than you are, you only have to fight one at a time for the most part. You don't have to worry about getting swarmed by 3 or 4 of them. Their damage type is 100% impact, so keep that in mind when choosing an armor. By the way, as long as if you use your mentorship armor, that will cover probably all of these mobs that you're going to hunt. That should be more than sufficient. If you're going to use something a little bit smaller or a little bit cheaper, you might have to dig around and see what will work for you. Entropia Wiki is a great place to find armor that matches up with the mobs that you're hunting. Anyways, what they're going to drop, again, muscle oil is great for crafting. It's got okay markup. It's a great trading item. They also drop paint can orange, which has decent markup as well. You're gonna get things like the leather extractors, animal hide. You will get hair gel from time to time. I found that has decent markup. If you can find a hairstylist, they're always willing to buy it at a decent price. Of course, you'll get diluted sweat, wool, stuff like that. I have gotten globals off of these guys. They drop, I believe, health regen chips and possibly fire attack chips. I'm not sure. I know I've got the health regen chips off of them before. And depending on the size, you can hit small globals between 10 and like 20 ped on these. You know, maybe bigger if you're really, really lucky, but you can expect to see anywhere between like 10 and 15 for the globals on these guys, which is exciting to finally start to see those swirlies. Next on our list is the classic Argonaut. I have found a nice spawn of them just north of Twin Peaks here. You kind of have to work your way around the side of the mountain or fly over the top of the mountain to get to them, but they're right back there. So the Argonauts are a classic mob to hunt. This level is a little bit higher than some of the other mobs that I've pointed out so far, so you might want to go hunt those small Berrycleds and the Shinkibas first, and then once you've leveled up a little bit more, then you can work your way up to the Argonauts, because they hover around level 7, level 8-ish. But they're still not too bad. They're a great mob to hunt. They are very aggressive, so you do need to be careful that you don't get mobbed by them. Their damage type is 25% cut, 75% impact, so make sure to take that into consideration when choosing armor to hunt these guys. Their health isn't too bad. Once you jump up to the youngs, it's quite a bit higher. There are some smaller ones around, but you're going to be in this group. You're looking at youngs, which is a minimum of 300, and you're going to see up to Gatherer for sure, maybe Guardian. I don't think there's a lot of Guardians. It's mostly going to be Gatherer, Scouts, and Adults and Youngs in this group, which you should be able to handle all those in that range. They're a great mob to hunt. You can get some nice little globals off of them. They drop everything from animal eye oil, which is fantastic for crafting and trading. Tier 1 components have great markup. Iron Stone. One of the few mobs that I know that actually drop a ore and end matter. Well, they don't drop an end matter, but they drop an ore. Ironstone has fairly decent markup, so if you don't like mining but you want to trade ores and end matters, I guess you could do it that way. Of course, they drop like diluted sweat and stuff like that, and you can get the occasional Mind Force chip off of these guys as well. That is my third pick, is the Argonaut, and it's nice because they're right next to Twin Peaks too. For my fourth pick, I picked the Snarksnot. I found a nice spawn of small ones just south of the Orthos West Mound. If you just climb up the hill there's a nice group of them there for you to hunt. The reason I picked the Snarksnot is because they have decent loot. Young, mature, and old all are under 100 health points, so it makes them fairly easy to take out, even if you're using TT guns or guns just slightly above that. It's very close to Camp Icarus, so it's easy to get to, especially for new players. Even if you don't have the West Orthos Mounds teleporter, you can just hike over there, even if you don't have a car or vehicle. It's only a few minute walk, and you can start hunting these bad boys. There are two different varieties. There are a male and a female, so if you do stumble across a different herd of them and they look a little bit different, it could be because they're female. I think this patch is male. Another thing to notice is the points for the different maturities. You get 6 points for killing a young, so it makes it fairly easy to get through the first couple Iron Challenge missions for these guys, and you can pick up some extra skill points from doing that. Just make sure you run over to that terminal and get those Iron Challenge missions. One thing to keep in mind, they do 100% impact, so when choosing your armor, keep that in mind. As far as the loot that they drop, you're mostly going to get animal eye oil, some mineral extractors, soft hide, diluted sweat, yada yada, the usual kind of garbage loot that you get from them. I think you can get some small globals from these guys, but for me, I don't think I've ever gotten one, so I don't know if they global very often. Some mobs global a lot more frequently. than other mobs. So, and it definitely depends on the maturity a little bit as well. So just something to keep in mind. All right, and for our final mob in our top 5 mobs to hunt is, of course, the Kerbos. One of the best places to hunt the Kerbs is at Boras. You can't really see the teleporter here, but it's on the bottom left hand or bottom right hand side of the map. It's also a fantastic place for new players to go and sweat, because the Kerbs don't do a ton of damage, they don't have a ton of aggro, and they have a lot of health, which gives them a lot of sweat. Now for a new player, them having a lot of health can be a little bit of a challenge to take them down. The youngs have 110 health points, and around Boras you're going to see everything up to, there are a few Guardian and Dominants, but for the most part it's going to be young, matures, olds, and a few providers. So they do have quite a bit more health. So keep that in mind when you're going to hunt them. They don't dish out a lot of damage for the most part, so they're fairly easy to tank, and they're pretty easy to evade. Another thing I like about it is, again, the points are very high, so you can get fairly far through the skill tree pretty quickly if you haven't started it. Their damage type is 20% cut, 80% impact, just like all the other ones. Pretty much everything on this list is either cut or impact, so as long as you have armor that cover both of those types of damage, you should be good to go to hunt everything on this list, as long as it's not too high of level. Again, those Argonauts were a little bit on the higher end, so you might want to put them to the end of your checklist. And as far as the Kerbs go, there's a lot of youngs that you can kind of pull out of the herds. Start with the youngs, see if you can take those, and then work your way up to the matures and the olds and the providers, of course. One of the reasons I love hunting these guys is they global like all the time. Granted, they're not always big globals, and I'm not saying every time you go hunt them that you're going to get a global, but by far, out of every mob that I've hunted in this game, I've gotten 10 times more globals from hunting these guys than any other mob. They do drop a lot of animal muscle oil, thin wool, you're going to get a lot of soft hide, diluted sweat, cloth extractors. I've gotten regen chips, I've gotten attack chips from these guys, all with decent markup. Well, mediocre markup. They don't have a lot, like 5 to 15% depending on what chip you get and how much TT is on it. Kind of depends on whether or not you'll sell it and how much markup you're going to get for it. But I highly recommend checking these guys out. They're a lot of fun to hunt. And there you go. Those are my top 5 mobs that I recommend hunting as new players in Entropia Universe. Now, of course, there are many different creatures to hunt, and these are just the ones on planet Calypso, which is the main planet most people start out on. I could probably do this 4 or 5 more times on all the other planets and do, top 5 mobs new players could hunt on those planets. I'm probably not going to do that anytime soon. I'm hanging out here on Calypso for some time. But anyways, if you think there are better mobs, or if there's ones that I should have included in this list, let me know down in the description below. I'm curious to see what you guys would recommend as great mobs for new players to hunt. I feel that these ones are easy enough to find. They're easy enough. Most of them are easy enough to kill for low level players, especially if they're still using like the TT guns. Some of them might be a little bit of a stretch, especially like the Argonauts and the Kerbs, but definitely like the Berrycleds and the Snarksnots, you could for sure go after those. So yeah, that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of my Entropia Universe content and other video game content as well. You can also scroll down to the description below and hit up my social medias. And until next time, guys, you have a good one.